Hey guys, my name is Bahia, and y'all know I got a story to tell y'all, right? Today is now uh, January 9th, Saturday, January the 9th, and it is now 3:59 in the morning here in New Jersey, right? And God has been reminding me of a story in the Bible that is so relevant in my life and maybe in your life and even in today's time, right? So without further ado, I'm going to read the story to you. I mean, the Lord gave it to me on like notebook papers, but I rewrote it on like a Google Doc so that it's easier for me to read, right? And I'm not like fumbling all over my papers. So let me go ahead and just begin the story for you. And as I always say, guys, if this message is for you, it's for you. If it is not for you, bye, it's not for you, right? So here we go. Let me tell you of a story about a certain man. There was a man named Moses who was raised up in the ways of the Egyptians. The man, for protection from death, was sent along the Nile River by his mother and was found by an Egyptian woman. This woman took the child into her palace and raised him as her own son. He grew up learning all they taught him, but really he was oblivious to his true identity and living under the umbrella of corruption, greed, power, and the need for control. But God, who predestined him from the time of conception, had another plan. The leader of the then most powerful government had a calloused heart and was led by an evil spirit. Within this land, which the Pharaoh ruled, there existed idol worship and oppression against God's chosen people. The young child, whose name is Moses, now grows and becomes a grown man. And he's beginning to have these internal battles with his identity. One day, Moses had taken the life of another Egyptian man, which was evil in the eyes of the Egyptians as well as the eyes of God. I mean, God does says, thou shalt not murder, right? Afraid for his life and the consequences that may follow, Moses left Egypt and all he had and embarked on a journey that would soon change the rest of his life. Along his journey, Moses had an encounter with God. Although he was what others and to himself would label as unholy, unworthy, and a sinful man, God still decided to talk with him and use him for his plan. During this conversation, God began to share with Moses what he was requiring him to do. God said, I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hands of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am sending you, Moses, to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses replied to God, saying, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Meaning, who am I that you want me to go and do your work, God? Um, you want me to go like into this government and do what now, God? Like you telling me to do what? Talk with who? Pharaoh? Oh my gosh, I can't do that. I can't do that. You want me to talk to the person in charge? I can't do that. Moses looking at his own abilities and what he knows about himself, he's like, wait, God, no, God, no. Please send someone else to do it. God became angry, right? Moses was using his own tongue and his own knowledge about himself to speak against the very qualities that God had placed on the inside of him. At this time, you see Moses, at this time, you're starting to see how Moses is thinking of himself. He sees himself as unqualified, unworthy, unholy, having a speech impediment, meaning unable to talk clearly as others may want him to, and not being the man equipped enough for the job. And he's just like, I don't want to do this. God, can you get someone else? And God is like, what? I created you for this very day to do what I wills for you to do. And so God tells Moses, look, I got help already coming. Your brother Aaron is on the way. He'll be happy to see you too. I will speak with both of you and I will teach you what to do. Poor Moses. He had to be afraid, right? I mean, he's entering this new realm, a new level of uncharted territory, and he already feels like he's not equipped. He's not eligible. But Moses takes God at his word, and now, with his speech impediment, he's stepping out of his comfort zone. And Moses goes back to the land that he ran from to do the will of God. The only instructions Moses received were go, say, say this, go, say this, and take the staff, and I'll do the rest. Just go say this, take the staff, and I'll do the rest. So numerous times throughout this story, he sends Moses and his helper, his brother Aaron, multiple times to the head of Egypt, the Pharaoh. And during those encounters, Moses is warning Pharaoh. And he's telling the Pharaoh basically, God said, let my people go. God said, do this, right? And the Pharaoh is with his hardened heart, his calloused heart. He's prideful. And he's like, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Bye, whatever. I don't want to hear it. And again, Moses is like, let my people go, right? And so the Pharaoh multiple times declines and ignores every single warning sent by God through Moses until he was faced with his final warning. Not taking heed to this warning will cost Pharaoh everything he loved. I mean, after so many attempts and so many warnings, and even an economic failure, the Pharaoh had lost everything. And now, following this final warning, he was about to lose the most precious thing to him, his son, an heir to his throne. Finally, he still refuses. His son dies. And after his son dies, after he's stricken with this unbearable pain and his pride is crushed, now Pharaoh decides to take heed to Moses' message and says, you know what, go. Take the Israelites and just go. Take all the money, all the gold, all the provisions, take all the animals, take whatever it is that that you came here with, take everything. I want all of y'all to just get out, just go somewhere, right? And the Israelites left the land of Egypt fully blessed and having everything they needed. But the story continues, right? Because the story tells us that the Israelites began to travel through the desert. And on their way to the promised land, they began to feel and think that God had abandoned them. And he was using Moses to lead them into this land with absolutely nothing so that they could die. Back in Egypt, Pharaoh is now being led by his emotions. His emotions are rising up. Pride is coming up because now he's feeling like they pulled a number on me. I let them go. My son dead. My government is destroyed. I don't have anybody here to work for me. And you know what? I'm going to go get them. I'm going to go get them. Right? And so he's like, I'm sending my army. We're going to go get them back. They got to come back. Right? And so the Israelites, right, now they're sitting there and they're beginning to look at God as if God's plan was not going to happen. They're even looking at Moses, right? And they're turning to Moses like, bro, like, what's going on? You said that we was going to go into a land full of milk and honey, and right now we in the desert. We thirsty. And throughout this story, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, but throughout this story, God provides for them. He gives them the manna from heaven. He's protecting them by a fire, by a fire by the daytime and like a cloud by night, or vice versa. Right? But he's protecting them and he's giving them these provisions that they need so that they can see that he's right here with them. But the people were still becoming afraid of the unknown, emotional, and really starting to doubt what Moses said about God delivering them and taking them into the promised land. Right? So again, the Israelites, they looking like God's plan was not going to happen. And many of them turned from God in their hearts and in their minds. Although they continued on the journey, some of them were thinking, in doubt, what's going on? In their heart, what's going on? Are we going to die? What's happening? Right? And many of them, they just continue marching forward and holding fast to what God has spoken. And again, you have two different types of people. This is what we see, two different types of people. You see, on one hand, you see people who are standing on what God said, regardless of what's going on around them, regardless of what they're seeing, regardless of what they're experiencing. They're standing on the facts and the promise that God said, I'm taking you to the promised land. And on the other hand, you have people who are they walking, but they're walking in doubt. They still moving in disbelief. Like they just it's more like they are just following the crowd. They're doubting. They really don't believe it. They're just like, oh, okay, everybody is still walking, so I guess I'll walk and just see what happens, right? But then you got those strong people, the strong Israelites, the strong believers who are standing on what God said, no matter what is happening on the outside or around them. And so, um, as we continue throughout the story, again, some people are questioning God about entering the promised land with milk and honey, the land of provision, and others are questioning whether God was going to spare them from this oncoming army of the Egyptians, right? Who are now literally chasing them down, right? They're not like right up on their hills, but they're close in along the route. And so many of them were so afraid, many of the Israelites, right? They were so afraid of what was happening that this is what they were saying, right? Did you bring us here to die? What do you do? Excuse me. What did you do to us by bringing us here out of Egypt? In other words, they're saying, we know it was bad. We know that the government was oppressing us. We know that the government was corrupt. But you know what? It wasn't that bad. Uh, what have you exposed us to? Where are you taking us? Why we rather stay over there. It was okay. I mean, it was okay. We rather just stay here. You're taking us into a place of the unknown, and we were okay over here, And it's like They're like, didn't we tell you? Didn't we tell you to leave us alone? Didn't we tell you that we will serve the Egyptians and stay in bondage and stay in corruption and stay in oppression? Didn't we say this to you, Moses? It's like, really? Right? Really? Do you really think that? Did you really want to stay in that land of oppression? The reality is, some of them did. You got the others, some more people probably sitting there like, well, it would have been better. It would have been better for us if we would have just stayed in bondage than to die out here in the desert. It's better. It's better for us over there. Let us stay over here. We don't want to die. We don't want to die, right? And Moses, he had to be like, going crazy. Not even like literally, but like thinking like, oh my gosh. First of all, am I hearing from God? Oh my gosh, these people, they keep coming up to me. Oh my gosh. Are they am I telling them the right thing? Did I really, really hear from God? Or was it me? Or was it the devil? Or who did, what happened? Am I gonna, are they gonna die? Are we gonna die? Do I keep going? How do I encourage them? And you know what? Moses had to gather himself. I'm quite sure he had to gather himself because to those people, we know that Moses says, as an attempt to calm them down, Moses says to them, in an attempt to calm the Israelites down, Moses says to the Israelites, do not be afraid. Stand. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. In other words, he's saying, stop fearing the unknown. Stop fearing what's in front of you right now. Stop fearing what is behind you. Stop fearing what's to the left and to the right of you. Stop fearing. I need you to stop fearing and stop worrying, right? Because, watch this, God is going to show up. As a matter of fact, the Egyptians you see today, you will never see them again. The Lord will fight for you. You only need to be still. Be still is a phrase meaning stand still in God. Stand still and know that He is God. Don't move. Don't be afraid. Don't try to do anything. Don't try to fix stuff. Just stand. If God told you to do something, if God told you to go somewhere, if God told you to say something, stop, stand, and do. Stand on what God has said to you. Right? So, continuing with the story, the people continue their journey, right? And when they reached the land of like no return, like they've come to the point of no return. It's the spot where they are at the Red Sea, and they got the Red Sea in front of them. They got the army of the Egyptians coming behind them, and really nowhere to go to the left or the right because it's surrounded by water, and the land is behind them, and the Egyptians are coming from behind them, right? And so they really like, okay, well, okay, what now? Like we don't have a boat. Uh, we got all this luggage, all this gold, these animals, the goats and sheep and cattle and all this stuff. We got babies and children and this water right here, and the army is over there. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Right? They have to make one of the most important decisions they were ever going to make this day. They were either going to believe God or not. They were either going to stand on what God had said or not. Can you imagine what Moses was thinking again at this time? Like, having gotten the Israelites all the way out of Egypt, all the way to the desert, right? As God had told him continuously, right? And repeating, God is going to do this. God is going to do this. God is going to do this. And now coming to this large body of water, whether it was 10 feet, 3 feet, 2 feet, I don't care about the depth of the water. They had come to a place where they could not walk straight through it, right? They could not cross. And yet, could Moses be feeling or like thinking, did I fail God? Did I fail the people? Did I really lead them here to die? Or, like I said, maybe I wasn't really hearing from God. Maybe that was me. And with all of this possible doubt running rampant in Moses' mind, Moses now had to make a decision for himself. He was either going to believe God and use the tool God had given him, the staff, right? And trust in God's power and God's ability to deliver them, or he was going to enter the realm of doubt, like some of the Israelites had begun, and do nothing. Either way, everyone at this point had to make a decision. Everyone had to make a decision about whether or not they were going to believe God. So Moses, he decides to do the best decision, the only decision, the decision that is going to be backed by power, backed by provision, backed by everything that God has for you. Moses decides to do what the Lord said. And he uses the staff that God had given him, right, to perform miracles. He uses the staff. He trusts in not his ability, not in his ability, but he begins to trust in God's ability, right? And on the mighty hand of God to move on his and the Israelites' behalf, right? At this moment and do what God said he was going to do. At the very last hour, the very last hour, a time when many of the Israelites' faith was being tested, God showed up. God showed up. Okay? At the moment of impossibility, God shows up. At the moment when everything in the natural is saying it's over, give up. It's not going to happen. God abandoned you. God shows up. This is called God's time. This is called God's time. None of us know his time. He is God. None of us can predict when God is going to do something. It is him. But one thing I will tell you is that when it is God's time, God steps in on the scene and he performs greater signs and wonders where you can't say that it was anyone else that did it but God. Like, you won't be able to give anyone the credit, not a single person, because that's how God's work. He wants all the glory, He wants all the praise, because it is Him who makes a way for us. It isn't us, it isn't our doing. It's nothing that we can do that can construct our lives the way that God intended it to be. We can screw up our lives, but we cannot construct our own destiny. It is something that God had already stirred up on the inside of your mother when you were in her womb. It's something that He put on the inside of you, a purpose that He put on the inside of you, like Moses. Put it there and said, at this time, you will do this. But we can screw up that time by doing things our way. By doing things our way and not following and standing on what God said. That's it. Now I'm feel like you might think I jumped around a little bit, but y'all know, if you know me already, y'all watch my YouTube. You already know sometimes the Lord will take over, honey. So that was that part right there. So, going back to God's time, right? The moment when God shows up on the scene, right? And he gets all the credit, he gets all the glory. This is what happens at that moment when Moses decides to get his staff and trust God to perform miracles through him. Okay? What do we see? Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, right? And all that night, the Lord drove the sea back with what? A strong east wind. And he turned the sea, the land, he turned it into dry land. The whole sea, the whole body of water, he turned it into dry land. The waters divided, and the Israelites walked right through the sea on dry ground, and there was walls of waters on both sides of them. A wall of water here, a wall of water over there, and they literally walked right through on dry ground. That's called the parting of the Red Sea. The parting of the Red Sea. And guess what happened? God parted the Red Sea and he escorted his people right into the promised land, destroying their enemies behind them. But it was at God's time, in God's speed, on his day, for his glory, for his purpose, not ours. So I'm going to leave you with that because that's the end of the story. And so, everybody, good night, or should I say good morning, because it's now 4:25. Love you all. Until next time, we'll chat. Who knows? Maybe the Lord might have another story for you.